And here we are, Epic Lunch and Learn. I think it's number 68. My kids were mad at me, John, yesterday because it was 67 and I didn't do one of these. So they're like, what's wrong with you? How are you today?
Good, my friend. Good, man. Yeah, I don't know. That these trends of things, right? I can't remember because I'm getting too old, but little things like psych or you know other themes that we used to talk about when we were kids, right? I never remember a 6-7 type thing, but
YOLO would probably fall in there.
YOLO. Okay, yeah.
Um,
I was trying
I
to
don't,
remember. I'm like, man, am I getting too old, or am I just not remembering these cool themes and things that we used to say?
I
So
mean, I mean, back in the day, and like if we're going back to the 90s, I remember like Beanie Babies were a thing.
yeah.
You got to go to McDonald's and get the Beanie Babies and the Muppet Babies. When McDonald's had the toys, obviously I was a McDonald's kid, as you can tell. But I remember Muppet Babies; they had the little toys back in the day. I wanted to get every single one of them. Obviously, just recently they brought back Monopoly.
Yeah.
That was a thing back in our probably childhood. But yeah, I don't remember necessarily. I don't know. Awesome was awesome. A saying just for us.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's why I said like psych, like psych,
yeah.
that type of thing. But yeah, I can't remember. I don't know. But it's interesting with some other friends. We've been talking a lot about the stages, right, of kids. And I read, I don't know if it was PBD or someone that we follow, talking about how your kids, idolize you till about 5 or 6 years old. And I still got a 6 year old, so like she loves tickle time and she loves dad coming home, but everybody else is like demonizing me now because they're in their teenage 12 and 14, the two older ones.
Sure.
So every once in a while they'll give me a hug or say goodnight, but most of the time nothing. And then one of my buddies, his daughter's a junior in college, and he said she finally flipped the switch to humanizing. So she's
Mm,
realizing, oh, dad and mom work careers to provide school and food on the table and a home over our head.
sure.
Like, oh, now they're humanizing because they're, she is particularly realizing, like, I'm about to be in the real world working after college and all that stuff, right? So it's interesting, levels of scenarios that the kids go through.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, I always ask the question like, when did you know your parents? Like, when did you really know who your parents were, and how they affect the world, and what's their position in the world? I think it's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I wrote this down as a thought pattern today. Is we live in a world where people know more than ever, right? And but we move less than ever. And so, I feel like we're in this like hesitation economy where, people hesitate, and it's like, how and why is it that people so smart, right? So many people are smarter than they were 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. How are they so smart, but they move so, they don't move. They don't go. Like, we know all this stuff. We see all these information. We have everything access to us, but then we're just slower than ever. Why is that? And I thought a conversation with you today would be interesting in that, because I think it really ties to a lot of the ideas that you had in your book, and that's
Yeah.
what I wanted.
I would say um, being unclear is probably the biggest way that most people are stuck. I would defer a little bit to, or differ in my mindset of what you shared, just to be a devil's advocate. I think we're not necessarily smarter. We just have access to more information quicker. Um, the chat GPTs, the Googles of the world, it started programming us, right, to be able to go to a resource. And what we used to do is go to a library. Kids don't know what a library is, or maybe you do, but I know our kids, we go to the library just to pick out books and then we leave. But I remember used to be able to go to the library and I forgot what it's called, like Xenograph or the what's it? Ah, man, I'm missing the word. But
You talking about the
anyway,
Dewey Point system where you got to find the
yeah,
book?
yeah, the graph, like you'd like twist this thing and you'd see these, pictures, and you'd have to put your head in something. And anyway, you'd have to research, right? And I
Sure.
think part of that is it's so easy to get the information, but we haven't discerned where we want to go and how clear we want to be, right? First
Sure.
chapter of the book is assess. To me, every part of my life that has had some interruption or change, I've had to take a step back, and that's what I learned through writing the book is assess. So that's part of it is that I think most people are stuck because they're unclear of exactly where they want to go.
Well, it's the headlines too, right? I mean, to piggyback on what you're saying is headlines create fear, right? And fear is the number one motivator. And so if you have a fear, you tend to move slower because it's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do right now? So there's a lot of noise, and it's really where you're getting your information from, right? We can see the same story, and this is amazing, really, to me. There could be one story, but there's 8 or 9 different outlets, and that's not what it used to be when you and I were growing up. The outlets were much smaller, but now with the 8 9 different outlets, you have 8 9 different perceptions on what happened. And this opinion based, kind of world that we're in now, it's their opinion and not the facts. And so it's hard to disseminate facts from fiction, real from AI, and all this stuff kind of, to me, gets people stuck on, things that what it takes to be successful. I mean, obviously, from your profession and your career, you've seen not only yourself, but you've seen other successful people. And there's some common traits, when you say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to there's something called unexamined patterns, right? Not lack of talent that typically creates this uneasiness, this unclarity. I think from interviewing 300 plus CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, people like yourself that built a brand like Epic Mortgage, right? Um, high performers are not confusing busyness from progress, right? Um, people that are making decisions in their life are concrete in their values and principles, as we know. One of our the people that we follow, he talks about values and principles, PBD, right? And what you tolerate, what drains your energy, where your emotion overrides the actual data, right? And becoming emotional about something, it creates unclarity, right? Uncertainty. So I think ultimately, these conversations are great because I think normal people, like we're not the biggest names in the world here, right? But we're
No.
just two regular Joes, right? Talking about, hey, how do we in a day-to-day normal life, like right now, it's December 16th, right? I've always believed it's holidays, not month. All right. That did you catch that?
I
Right?
like that. I like that.
Holidays, not month. All right. I had a meeting yesterday with some colleagues in the commercial banking world, and it's interesting. I didn't say this to any of them, and they're all my competitor colleagues. But we're at a meeting and we're learning about capital markets and what's called sponsor finance and partnership financing. It's kind of where many banks get together and fund a $60 million deal, as an example. And then we learned about FX, foreign exchange trading, and how we can help companies that are doing foreign business, international business. And bottom line is the mindset was, and I looked around the room, and some of my colleagues may see this, but I looked around the room, and the funny thing was, is everybody was waiting. We're at Ditka's in Oak Brook Terrace.
Mhm.
Everybody was waiting to go get drinks. I feel like I was one out of maybe 20 that was writing notes because I really felt like, oh wow, this information is really good. And maybe it's my naivety because I'm new to this particular organization. I really wanted to know the people that were speaking and the information they were sharing because maybe I could use that to further myself and what I could do to help my clients. And it's funny, we get to the bar and it's happy hour, and everybody's talking about where they're going, what they're doing, how they're relaxing, how after Thanksgiving they've stopped kind of working. And I'm just thinking in my mind, man, it's time, baby. It's time to get poured on. You know what I've been doing? I 5, 7, 10 clips of my shorts of interviews like with guys like you, bam, 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 on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube, right? And then I've been promoting the book. I've been doing podcasts like this. I've been working like cold calling. I've actually been knocking on doors, cold calling in this freezing weather, and people are like, "What are you doing out here, man? It's like 10 below degrees." And I'm like, "Well, I'm the only one out here, so let's talk about your business and what's going on." So my point to that is, you know, I'm clear about what I want to do in 2026. And until you assess and get clarity, I think that's why it's the opinion nation and, suck into more information and go to every webinar and find every book and then do nothing. That's the problem. Doing nothing is the problem, right? So hopefully
There you
that
go.
I went kind of around your question, I guess.
I know, I like it. I mean, analysis by paralysis, right? It's you're just stuck in the mud. You're standing still when you're moving forward. So how, I mean, all right. So let's go with you. Let's focus on you right now. You're heading into 26. Do you have a theme? I know it was thrive in 25. Do you have a theme for 26? What does 26 mean for you?
Complete clarity. I have 3 or 4 different areas of my life besides the 5 F's, which is faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, right? There's 3 to 4 areas that in my career and what I'm doing with the podcast and bringing it all together as a brand so
Mhm.
that when people think of John Andrade, they think of helping businesses, individuals go to the next level, right? So those are areas that's me. So I mean, complete clarity of what I want to do in Q1, in Q2, Q3, and Q4. I've already got a great plan together. And they say, plans are like sand. Sometimes they can be, move around and be amiable, right? But
Right.
I've got the targets that I want. I submit, in my job, right? We submitted our 2026 goals, and it was through SMART, which is a very
Sure.
nice way to be able to put out there, right? Specific, measurable, attainable. I forgot the other R and T, reasonable, and timing. Um, but it was interesting because as I worked on that, I really visualized the first 12 weeks of my year, right? And there's a great book, The 12-Week Year, um, by Dan something or other. But he talks about taking your year by quarters, right?
Sure.
And even though we have a long-term way, like 5 or 10 year goals or 20-year goals, depending on things that you're working in your life, every quarter should have some sort of clarity, complete clarity of what you want to accomplish, so that by January 15th, February 15th, March 15th, you're never surprised of where you're at. You're checking in those points and you're creating that momentum to hit your goals in Q1 and so on.
I love that. Now going back into December right now, when are you having time to kind of plan out 26? So, I mean, it feels a little dual ship that you're going, right? You're still knocking on doors and trying to make it happen now, or planting seeds at least. But then when do you have that white noise where you just sit and really focus and hone in on, clarity for next year? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to make time, right? You're a busy guy. You own a successful mortgage business. You have this podcast that you're doing. You have kids that you have to raise.
Sure.
I don't know if do you coach offhand, coach
No,
sports?
no, I
Yeah,
could not do that. So I told him, no, I will be there. I'll be at the game, but I'm not
yeah.
participating.
So,
A funny thing about coach, because you're an athlete. I just want to
yeah,
go on a quick tangent.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think the way we grew up in that era of Bobby Knight and Gene Katie and just these real, gruff, in your face. I mean, that's what I grew accustomed to. That's what I know that got the best out of me. And either you could make it happen, or it was sink or swim.
yeah.
But he never was. Phil Jackson was probably the first one. And when I think of coaches, a Joe Torre, for example, these guys that had the ability to really become psychologists, and they managed different personalities. But until those people came in, later 90s, early 2000s, it really was, this is the way, and you're either with me or against me. And now I see these sports, and I'm so not used to like patting people on the back saying a good job when I'm like, that was horrible. You got to do
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I will say last night was my last coaching practice for our sixth grade basketball girls. And I
Hmm.
wanted to take my hair out and just pull it because I'm like, hey, we have one practice left. We have one game left on Saturday. And then we go on this break. And most girls, they're with their family, which is awesome. And they're traveling and they got their winter break for the holidays. And it was interesting because what my assistant coach is leaving. Unfortunately, well, good for him. He got a new job offer in New Jersey, so he's leaving this area and leaving out there. But we kind of played good cop, bad cop.
Sure.
Um, and I agree with you. And it was interesting because my daughter's on the team and his daughter's on the team. So I would, do the Bobby Knight a little bit harder, grittier with his daughter, and he would do it with my, so we wouldn't have to conflict, right?
Sure.
Um, but it was interesting. Last night, the girls were just in a giddy mode. Like they were giggling for everything and everything I was trying to teach them because we were trying to break the press on basketball. It was something that tripped us up this last weekend in a couple games. And we were trying to really put these two plays together. And man, for the life of me, I could not get them to like zone in and focus. Right. So I kind of, for about 20 minutes, let them just do whatever. I go, girls, you know what? If you're not going to listen and coach is speaking, I go, why don't you just do 4-on-4? Because we have 8 girls on the team, 4v4, and let's see what you can do. And they were playing, playing, playing. And about 12 minutes in, you could start to see the frustration. And all of a sudden, the two lead girls kind of came over to me and said, hey, coach, do you mind if we go over these plays again? She's like, because we're not really understanding and da da da. So, long story short, I feel like this generation or the last few generations,
Sure.
it's almost like you have to put them in an environment where they're able to fall on their face, right? Because our tough coaching was we fell on our face, we were told what was wrong. Here, let's go, let's hit it, right? This feels like I want to be hard and strong on them, but if I take that line and I don't let them self-discover, then a lot of the helicoptering that happens with parents and stuff like that kicks into these kids and they don't self-evaluate, discover where they're going to go into the next level of something. So, I think it's an interesting topic, right? Of how coaching was back when and now coaching now. And I've only been coaching for a couple of years in a sport that I'm not even that good at. But it's been fun to see kind of the transformation of those mindsets and hopefully when the game hits, they do focus in. So I got to give them a little bit of credit. So
No, I think I love it. I mean, coaching is a skill set, and to some degree, we're coaching our clients. We're coaching, our loved ones. We're coaching our spouses. I mean, we're always to some degree using that skill set. I just in that arena, hands up. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. No matter how much, I get frustrated when I see, and I'm like, man, that's the product, but that's not my play. But
I agree.
I'm, because you know what is fun? Fun is winning, and that's the bottom line. And that's what I grew up with. You want to have fun, win, and
Yeah.
and learning how to win. And so sometimes, and I take that kind of personality with my clients. I want to help them win. But at that child level, one thing about children, and it's true. It's just it. I That is an outer body experience that all parents have to deal with.
Yeah.
That is, I may, if I hit you, you may not feel anything, or it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. But if I hit your child, it snaps. It's a snap to you as a parent. And so it's like knowing that and knowing how people are so sensitive to their own kids. It's just, I don't know if I could be that same passionate guy for them the way I know how to be, and the way I would want to be, and the way, I hold myself accountable. So it's, yeah, that I give you kudos to want to
Yeah.
deal with sixth graders. My
Yeah. No.
goodness.
Well, I volunteered last year because nobody was going to coach, and I was like, okay. And basketball is not necessarily my sport. Totally enjoy it and have admired MJ and Kobe and
Sure.
and all the greats. But it was interesting because I had to learn plays and understand it. But then when you take a team of zero skill, all first timers last year, to upgrading it just a little bit to this year. And now we actually attracted a new talent that's a part of the school, and she's playing this year, and she's got some skills. So now we're starting to form, and we already won our first two games out of three.
Wow.
We lost the last one in double overtime, 15-13. So it was
Wow.
13-13 to the end of fourth quarter, then the first overtime, and then the second overtime. The last 15
Mm.
seconds we lost. It was a nail biter. But yeah, man, it's just it's a great topic. I think it's such a sports are such a grab to tie into action, right? As we talk about like CEOs and founders and that mindset, you know, they don't wait to feel ready, right? You don't wait to go into a game. I always tell the girls like, hey, we're about to move into this situation, right? Into this moment. And I try to up the level of what the game means, right?
Mhm.
You've practiced hard and that has prepared you for the game, but this is another level, and take that mindset. They actually, I'll just tell a quick story. I know we're totally sidebarring here. Sorry, but
No, you're
um,
good.
it's funny. The first overtime, the girls were frantic. They were like they couldn't. Some of them were getting hyperventilating, and we had to take a timeout. And I took two in a row because literally the first time out was almost like just getting them to, hey, relax. All right, we're gonna be okay. Look at because they started pressing real hard and we couldn't break the press. And I drew up a couple plays, and my assistant coach, we were kind of talking through things, and then like they went out and they almost scored. Then we recovered. I called the timeout again because we had actually three timeouts available, and came back and literally was just taking a moment of like solace and saying, hey, all right, hey, we're in this moment. We can do this. We have this. You've won games before, and like reminding them, hey, ex girl, like remember when you did this and you turned around and how successful that was and how you freed up that space. Do something like that. Da da da. This and that. So just reminding them. So it was kind of like the tie-in between decide, move, adjust, right? Like move and kind of where are you going to be at to be able to execute the next level. So
I mean, I think sports in general, and that's why I feel like even in a tangent, you can always tie it back, like you said, action. And there is no perfect time, right? The myth of the perfect time to do anything is is fallacy. And so this
mhm.
is just living proof that in life there is no perfect time, right? There's no perfect time in basketball or any to situations that come about and deal with it accordingly. And so, no, I mean, and these are great, I mean, once again, why do people play sports when they're kids? I mean, there are also just life lessons that you can learn, life lessons that kind of like how to just, and you have the 4 A's, right? So it's awareness, right? The first one's awareness.
Assess.
Second
Yeah.
one is alignment,
Ass-
assess, assess,
Assess,
alignment,
alignment, accountability, and then take action.
accountability, and then take action. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I
Because
mean, just think about it in a sports reference.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
it's kind of like every situation, right? In basketball, it's interesting because you have a back and forth, right? You're on offense, you're back on defense. Oh shoot, you lost the ball. You're back on offense, or you're back on defense, and then it's like such a back and forth, right? And one of the things that I feel like the book does is in every situation take a quick assessment of where you're at. Like, I mean, it could go to something really bad, like, God forbid a shooting or something that's crazy, right? That's out of this world, not a good thing. And if you've practiced this assessing scenario in every part of your life, right? I'm about to go off on my wife because I really feel specific about this certain subject, and we're about to get into a heated debate. I tend to now, over years of trying to do this and perfect this, is assess in the moment, is this worth my challenging time to argue with my wife, or can I take a step back? It doesn't work all the time, but as an example of assessing, right? Um, something comes up in a situation, you'll relate to this one. I've always said, like, we're about to close a new, funding, call it mortgage or loan, right? Um, and something comes up with the environmental and commercial, and all of a sudden they need a phase two, which is another $14,000 event
Mm,
that the client wasn't aware of and didn't even think about. Maybe we didn't get a chance to prep them that this could be an eventuality because there's some neighbors in the area that are dry cleaners or oil type producing companies and parts and stuff like that, right? That so maybe a neighbor inhibits the ground and it becomes a phase two situation. Assessing right at that moment, how do we handle this so that the client can still look at this opportunity as a valuable one, to then, hey, if you take a phase two, the beauty of it is that we'll know for sure if you even really want to buy this land, because is it contaminated? Do we have the seller be able to remediate that land and bring it up to par so that it's no longer a problem for the future? Because if you buy this, let's say you want to buy it cash, you still have that problem on your hands. And when you go to sell it, it's an issue, right? So assessing that situation in that moment as an example. So many different things that I feel like when you start with assess and your mindset is driven by, like, hey, assess the situation right now, assess it. Like, my camera's not working, right? Before we got on this, my webcam 4K camera's not working. Okay. Well, this new computer has HD as well. Okay, it's not that bad. All right, let me put the lighting right. All right, boom, we're ready to go, right? And I didn't
right.
realize that the camera wasn't going to work. So assessing is one of my favorite subjects, and then it goes right into alignment, right, with people like yourself that we can collaborate and do some big things in life. So
I mean, assessing, so you assess where you are and then where you want to go, correct? So, I mean, really putting a point A and a point B, and you're trying to say, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, and then starting to make the necessary moves of being. Then let's talk about alignment then. So now I know my point A and my point B. What does alignment do for me?
yeah, I mean, alignment is my favorite chapter, right? Because I talk about mentorship and people that you connect to. So recently, and I'll give you an example, right? Um, you know, I went to a men's retreat. It was called the Crucible. It's a Christian men's retreat recently, about a month ago. And in that environment, there was 34 men that did like a 3-day retreat. And out of that retreat, not only did we experience some really deep understandings of how they process issues in people's lives and camaraderie, but I walked away with 3 or 4 really strong relationships that I bonded with. And now, interestingly enough, I go from that event a month ago to being invited by one of the gentlemen who's in private equity, and we happen to have some background of growing up in Melrose Park and some areas like that. Um, we know some mutual people. We do this event. Now he invites me to a Blackhawks game, all
Hmm.
right, in their suite on Wednesday, and I meet all these other PE people, which I'm not really of the PE world. I'm a commercial lender, right? So I'm on the debt side. They're the investors and buyers of companies and all this stuff. That's an interesting world to me. And now that alignment is together. And guess what happens yesterday? I meet a gentleman who sells software into the PE world. I connect this gentleman to this gentleman, and now that's an alignment. And guess who is the better for both? Myself,
You,
because now they both value, right? Yeah. So
you,
they both
you're the
value
connector.
me. Yeah, I connected them, right? So to me, alignment, once you have a clear A to B, I want you to go into your network. And if you don't have it in your network, then ask some people that may have a semblance of a connection to that person that you really want to meet. So call up Dante, right? Hey, he's in the mortgage world. He's a professional. He owns his own mortgage business, right? Um, does he have any one of his clients that has ever produced copyright for media? I'm just throwing something out there,
Right.
right?
Right, right,
And
right.
all of a sudden, Dante knows the owner of FX Media, blah, 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 right? It's like, to me, that is always the connection of alignment. It's so fruitful that when we talk about like information overload, go into your network, right? And build relationships so that you can not only connect others to others, but be the one to ask for someone who can be connected to you, right? And that's really what alignment was all about. So,
I mean, now I took it a little bit more micro, and I was thinking of like income to lifestyle, risk to loan type,
mm,
time horizon and decision making. You know what I mean? So I think, I mean, from a micro perspective, if I'm just looking as an individual when I think of alignment, but to your point, I understand about the networking of, who do I know that, or who do I know that may know someone that I need to know?
yeah, I mean, like, and even in the micro that you're talking about, maybe it's not a human being, but it's alignment of right values and principles and things like,
Correct.
hey, where do you want to go? Is this the way that you want to move? Right.
Correct.
Um, decisions are valued in the aftermath a lot of times, right? Meaning you make a decision, you take an action, and then you're either going to get the negative or the positive feedback from people,
Correct.
and you've got to be okay with it, right? Um, I mean, I'll share, right? You and I have been talking about some personal things on mortgages, right, recently in the
Sure.
last few months, and the beauty is that you're such a professional. Like, you gave me all these like three or four different choices, right? Then I evaluated with my wife, and then I had to make a decision, right? And it's awesome. The way that you put thoughts together of ideas and then decipher that. And that's why, when I think of someone and people are like, hey, you need a mortgage, you got to go to Dante, right? Because you're always willing to get that, you're willing to assess the situation, then align it to the principles and things that you've learned and so value throughout your relationships and your experiences, right? So,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, and that's what it takes. I mean, at the end of the day, you provide options. And they don't always go with the options that you choose, but you provide the options and you keep the door always open, right? I mean, it may not be a closed door, right? It might be just slightly open, but it's always open because you don't want to burn bridges. Obviously, in any relationship business that you have, you don't want to burn bridges, and you never know if some people decide, for example, I actually had a client yesterday. It's a previous client. I helped them buy their house, and so they bought their house, and then they were a couple years later come back and they want to do a line of credit, and so we started the path of doing the line of credit, and it just at that time, it just didn't work out, and it
mhm,
was kind of like, you know I won't say it botched up, but it just didn't work out, right? Not everything was aligned, let's just say that.
mhm,
And it's always awkward in the mortgage business when deals don't go through, because there's always that level of like frustration on both ends. Obviously, if I make a commitment to say, hey, this is what we should do and let's do it, I'm trying to close the deal, and obviously you're having an expectation that the deal will close, and then when it doesn't, there's always that like frustration point where like, God, I wasted my money or I wasted my time. I should have, just done something else, whatever the case is. But, some time had lapsed, and then they called back and said, hey, do you think it's better now? And so now we're working the plan. And I think that's where you always keep that door open. You explain everything with clarity so people understand the situation. Not every deal is going to close, unfortunately. I wish every deal would close, but sometimes there's just so many different twists and turns. And so we're not all the same. Not every lender is perfect for everyone, and so you have to find your financial team. We talked about that yesterday on the show. We were talking about, one of the things that I encourage people to do is develop a financial team. So many
mhm,
people don't really have a defined financial team around them, and it's kind of a board of directors. When you have to make decisions, who are you going to talk to? Obviously, you're going to speak to your wife, but who else? And so it should be a loan officer. It should be a financial advisor. It should be maybe a realtor, because you want to get their different perspective on a situation, because they all provide different experiences, and
mhm.
then that can help you kind of mold your own opinion on how what's best for you and your family.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, in my opinion, for like small business owners, anything up to about $10 million really is what a small business is categorized in America, 0 to 10 million. Advisory boards, right? You know, I can't believe being in this field of commercial lending and banking and having been in this finance world for a while now, how many small business owners, founders of companies, don't have an advisory board? And it's something that in 2026, I'm very focused on delivering this message, right? And it's been like, hey, at the table, you want your banker, your accountant, your attorney, right? Your financial professional, right, from their personal side, because as they're living their life of building a business, they also are having a personal gain that they're gaining, right, from more assets, more investments, more opportunity, right, greater growth in their financial world. But and even one that obviously encompasses their faith and their family and their fitness, right? These 5 F's, I think, always kind of find their way back into the whole evolution of what we do on a daily basis, and trying to categorize things into, all right, hey, here's the area that I'm working on, and here's the steps that I could take to take action.
How did you develop those 5 F's? I mean, that's
I stole it.
I, I was, because I'm big into acronyms. I love acronyms, and one of the acronyms I think I learned was FORM,
Yeah.
FORM, and it's a way to obviously engage you in a conversation where we're talking about family, your occupation, what do you like to do for fun, and just what are your goals, what's your mentality like. So that's an interesting one. The 5 F's, F.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that
Yeah.
from?
I can't remember who exactly it came from, but I know that there's a lot of webinars and people that are in the
Sure,
speaking world that talk about it. But if you think about it, right? And I boldly say this, right? I'm not perfect, and in my Christian background, I know that my Savior was the only perfect one, so I'm always less than perfect.
sure.
So faith, to me, and especially with some of the things going on in the world right now, and some boldness out there in different areas, I think you need to ground yourself somewhere. And for me, it's that place, it's faith. So that makes a lot of sense for one of the F's. Family, right? Ultimately, running alone in a business is like being single, right? It's kind of fun sometimes, but when you take a step back and through all the challenges and through all the money that you spend raising these darn kids, and the decisions you make of clothing in private school or public school, or what extracurricular activities they do, man, I will say, I know a guy that we love to follow, both of us, Patrick Bet David. You know, there ain't nothing like family. Like when you have a really strong core of a family to lean back on, it really is. And I consider friends in that family, right? Like
Sure.
a guy like you that I can call up and just, I know we've talked sometimes 45 minutes on the phone. It was just a random call that we started talking, and it's so cool. And you're part of my family, right? Like that's where the living, breathing, earthly voyage is. And your faith is kind of that connection to, we all know we're going to leave one day. Um, then finances are important, because I don't care what anybody says. You know, I'd rather have money and have some choices than not have any money and be, unfortunately in a situation where I can't predict or do the things that I want to do to help my family, to give back to my faith, to do things with those finances that are bold and be able to change some things in the world. Right. And then the last two are fitness and fun. You know, I've self-discovered. I just turned 50. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So 12
Whoa, you look great,
uh,
man.
December 5th. Thank you. Thank you. So, and it's funny. So I'll tell a totally funny thing. So I'm on Instagram, and something comes up. Hey, model over 40s. We're looking for models over 40. It says just take a picture of yourself. So, bro, I'm like, I'm turning 50. Like, what the hell? Let's do it. So I take a picture of myself. And literally earlier today, the agency, now I don't know if it's legit or not, but it's
Sure.
probably obviously some sponsor thing, but it said, hey, we'll do a photo shoot with you to determine if you could really qualify into being a model over 40. And I'm like, why not? Right? Like, I don't know. I mean, some guys are doing it, some gals are doing it over 40, right? And they're models. You don't have to be 20 something years old. And there's publications and things that people want a little bit older look. Um, my point to that is I feel like every freaking F is part of our life: faith, family, fitness, finance, right? And then the fun, right?
Right.
Going to that Blackhawks game to tie it into finance because I'm building a relationship with a guy in private equity that can affect my commercial banking, that could affect other deals I do in the future. Um, and then we connected because of a thing that we did together, which is a principle of faith and family, right?
Sure.
My ultimate thing is that the reason I gravitated to those five F's is because it feels like a complete set of areas of my life that I can, if I'm spinning all five wheels at the right rhythm, man, life feels freaking good. And it always has some disturbance in one area or the other.
Of course.
But it certainly feels good to kind of concentrate on these five F's. And then from writing the book, putting a formula together that helps me assess, align, right? Take accountability and take action.
No, it's awesome, man. I really do love that. I've always, the Epic Spotlight podcast really focuses on the four pillars of my life, which are health, wealth, love, and happiness. And so I kind of have that mantra, but I can see where yours blends in. And, the happiness is the internal, and I'm always looking within, like, what's going to make me happy? I mean, they always say happy wife, happy life, but uh, we know being married for quite some time that, we also have to be happy too.
Yeah.
And so, just the internal love that we have for ourselves, because I think both you and I, coming from competitive backgrounds, we push each other. You
Mhm.
push yourself and you have a high expectation. I mean, some people can look at you right now and be like, oh my God, John, you're amazing. You got this beautiful family, you wrote a book, you got a great job, and now you got this great podcast, you're doing amazing things, and there's something within you and your DNA that you're not satisfied. It's not
Mhm.
enough. You have a higher expectation for who you are and where you want to be defined. And whether you're defining yourself or you're wanting others to define you, you have a higher expectation of where you are currently. And so that eats inside of me as well, where people look at me, hey, you got this mortgage company, you wrote a book, you got a podcast, so you're doing all these things, but I'm not where I want to be, and
Mhm.
so I have to internally make myself happy, but then also I have to learn how to love, right? I have to externally make sure I'm giving love to my family. I want to make sure I know how to do that, because there's such a focus that I have that I'm like trying to make myself where I want to be, but then I got to focus on others. And so that's a separate dynamic that I love having these conversations about, because I just want to be a better overall person around the people that love me, and I want to, give back to them as well. And then obviously, wealth is easy to talk about because it feels like we're playing this game, right? We're playing this monopoly game, and I think a lot of stuff is just set up in the world as distractions.
Mhm.
And we have to keep our eye on the prize. So, yes, I love the Bears and I want the Bears to do well. But, I was here on Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, doing my YouTube, because that's what I have to do. I can't always sit there and wait, watch all 3 hours of a game, because my priorities are different now. When I was a
Mhm.
kid, that's what it was. But now I understand, like, love sports and I love the team, but I don't get paid if they win, and I have to take care of my business, and so I have to focus on what's important to me. And so you have to fight the distractions that, society, to your point, holidays, not holla months, or like birthday, not birth months. It's my birth month. Let me go celebrate every day. It's like, you got to stay focused on what you, because it's all about accumulation. So many of us are in an accumulation phase right now in our lives, where we have to accumulate enough resources in order to have decisions down the road. I talk about this concept, and it kind of came to my mind, but it was like, You have to work 40 years for 20 years.
Mm.
40, so it's like a 40-20 split. And so, I want to fight that a little bit because I feel like I'm late to the party and recognize I signed up for this 40-20 and I didn't even know I did. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you graduate college and then you just get going and then it's like, all this stuff happens, wife, kids, your own house, all this stuff. And then you kind of wake up one day and you start recognizing like, man, I'm in this 40-20 split and I didn't sign up for it. I didn't know I did. And so, just talking about that, and then none of that can be possible. None of the stuff I'm talking about can be possible without your health. Your
Mhm.
health is I mean, getting up every day, being that consistent person and that disciplined person. You can't do that if you're not healthy. And just, what you put in your mouth, your environment, environment can breed stress too. And sometimes those are things that we don't even ponder or realize, but just being in good environments where you can succeed. And so those are my four pillars that I kind of lean on as just keeping my balance. I mean, because it's a balancing act.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, look, I think we all kind of hopefully develop right different areas of our life at different times of our life, and being okay with that at the time that you are developing it is also a big deal too. Because I think there's a lot of frustration sometimes of 20-year-olds thinking like, "Man, I'm supposed to be super successful by now. Look at all these YouTubers and people that are doing great things," and
Exactly.
according to them, right? And then in your 30s, you're kind of in that middle stage of like, oh, I just started having kids. I'm just learning about how to be a parent. I'm just figuring out who's having Thanksgiving dinner at whose house, like these types of decisions, right? These are 30-year-old decisions. And then in your 40s, right, things start to hopefully kind of settle in and mature and understanding. So, man, here's an epic spotlight question. All
Mhm.
right. Do we ever arrive?
Mm. That's such a good question. It is so funny because I told a friend of mine he's going to be on the show next week. I said I'm going to write another book, right? My goal is to write 4 books, and I said my last book I'm deciding on it, but I said the title would be "Was It Worth It?"
Mm,
And so to answer your question, do you ever arrive? Was it worth it? Yes, you do arrive, but you never know when. You don't know when. You don't know when because I think, like you said, I mean, when you're assessing yourself, we don't have a lot of clarity. And I sit here today listening to you and I was like, yeah, I have some glimmer ideas of what I want, but I don't have a clear, John, this is who I want to be. This is
mhm,
where I want to be in the world. This is my expectation on how much money that means, and so on and so on. I don't have a clear definition of really who I am. So therefore, you could arrive to a place and not even realize that you're there.
mhm.
And the purpose of the book of Was It Worth It is, doing all this stuff to get to a certain point. I want to write the book. Was it worth it? I mean, because I feel like it's an adventure book, right? Now let's take it back to our young self. John, if you want to marry this lady, go to page 37. If you want to tell her to kick rocks, go to page 64. I mean, it's an adventure book. Every decision that you make leads you down a path. Hey, you're the
Oh, that's
coach of a
cool.
sixth grade basketball team, leads you down a different path, different
Mhm,
experiences, different skills that you obtain by doing that. I opted not to do that. Now there's different things that I have to, I get frustrated watching them play sometimes. Hey, don't get mad. That's on you. If you thought you could bring more impact, that's your fault. So it's one of those things where the decisions that we make lead us down a path that we're going to have to deal with consequences. And to your point, whether they're good or if they're bad, is right or wrong. But yeah, I think we do arrive, but we don't arrive until we have clarity on where we are trying to arrive to. What do you
yeah.
think?
Yeah, I mean, I love, and I'm really kind of concentrating on what you're sharing, and it makes a lot of sense. I feel like um, I initially would have said we never arrive, so then that mindset always has you in self improvement, a little bit better every time, 1%, that type of stuff, that type of mindset. But I like the way that you put it, that you arrive at times and you didn't even know that you had, but you may not be in the right place that you wanted to be because all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, wait, like this is actually not what I wanted to do. But somehow I shifted and I didn't realize 3, 4, 5, 7 years of my life and I'm here, right? So
Right.
you do arrive. I agree. I agree. And I had to switch my mindset of how you were just explaining that. So I really like that. And that's the challenging part, right? I would have said we never arrive because I feel like, oh, when I was 18, I'm thinking different than I was 28. And
Sure.
then at 28, I'm thinking different at 38. And at 48, a couple years ago, I go to write this book, and it was just a bunch of stories and things and ideas and experiences and stuff. And all of a sudden, it comes to light that it's a formula that I've used in my life, right? And I want to share it with the world. And it's interesting. We have a similar goal. I want to write 4 books as well. Um, you know, and it's interesting because the next one I want to write, I'm already thinking it's either, well, it's this is the one I believe is what I'm calling. And it was funny because I took that picture to submit myself for over 40 modeling. I really feel men over 40 need some sort of freaking jolt, wake up, kick in the ass. Pardon my expression. Um, I feel that in my 40s, I ran into so many 40-year-old men that were acting like weenies. And that's the softest word I could say. Okay. Um, and it's interesting. And look, I was one of them in many aspects of my life of faith, family, fitness, finance, fun. I wasn't putting in the time to read my Bible. I wasn't uh, the best husband to my wife or my father to my kids in my 40s. All right. My fitness, I kind of went back and forth. I stayed pretty limber and pretty good, and I worked out and stuff, but I never truly committed to a program. Right. My finances, I went from high highs in 6 figures and but never hit seven, and then low lows of very bad stuff, right? So, it's interesting in my 40s, but I never stopped. And it was so cool that we just talked about for the last 35, 40 minutes about this mindset of arriving and not arriving, right? So I love your viewpoint, and I'm sharing my viewpoint that I think men in their 40s start to sometimes, for at least from my experience and seeing other people, um, they start to give up on, like, hey, well, I guess I'll just be X, right? And this is who I am, and this is where I arrived, and these are my family. Like, this is all that I have to offer, right? And I think there's something that I want to write to, like I said, kick people in the butt that are men, because I think there has to be a rise up of more men because we're the example for the 15-year-old, for that 25-year-old, for that 35-year-old, right? Um, and I think boomers, as an example of a generation before us, did a pretty good job in their work ethic and stuff like that, but they missed some of the things of knowing how to balance. And I always I say that cautiously because I always say there's never really true balance. But I think the thing I learned from the boomers is that, as an example, they didn't have the technology that we have now to be able to implement some realm of balance between their business or things that they're working on so that technology can help them and then be able to spend time in their faith and their family, right? And you
Right.
create and make time in these areas. It's not that you just are given certain time, right? Because we all have the same 24 hours. There's a guy named Ed Milet that we both follow, right?
Love them.
He talks about 6 a.m. So this is going to sound crazy, Epic Spotlight family and LinkedIn world and whoever you listen to, but it's going to sound crazy on the surface. But think about this: you have 24 hours, right? Let's say you sleep 8 of them, right? Now, what about, well, 6 of them. Yeah, 6 of them because it's 18. So I'm going to break down 18 hours, right? This is the way he breaks it down. He says 6 a.m. to 6 to 12 p.m. is one full day of action of your life. I woke up at 6 in the morning. I usually do because I take care of like the kids, waking them up, getting breakfast done, getting their lunches, all that type of stuff, right? But by 8 or so, I'm done with drop off and all that stuff. And I could either choose to work out, go into like, hey, what did I write down last night as some of the priorities for that day? And then start making some calls from 8 to 10, right? I booked a podcast, so I get a little bit of prep time for that. And that's what my day looked like today. Those mix of things. Then from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., guess what we're doing? This first hour, 12 to 1, I'm doing Epic Spotlight with Dante, my man. And we're sharing with the world some great information. And then I've got 3 or 4 different things that I'm doing. I've got a team meeting at 3 o'clock. I've got kids pick up at like 5ish because they're staying after school. I've got 2 client calls that I have to accomplish because there's some things that we're doing to change in terms of our lending agreements. All right. So from 12 to 6, I've done a bunch of things that progress. And then 6 to 12, all right, if you don't so dare boldly to go to 12 p.m. at night, midnight, all right, is another day. So he chunks days out 6 a.m. to 12 p.m., 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., and 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. Or 12 a.m., sorry. And it's interesting. I don't always make it to the 12 a.m. because sometimes I'm getting tired nowadays, but it's interesting. Once I learned that way of kind of managing your day, he talks about the multiplier, and Kobe Bryant talked about this. Kobe Bryant would go work out, and I'm not going to fully express it the way he did, but
Sure.
he would literally go work out 3 or 4 times a day, and he called it the force multiplier in a sense because his competition would go work out once for their day, and he had worked out in the morning,
Right.
in the early afternoon, and in the late at night. And that multiple of those 3 times 365 days a year times 20 years in his career, he could literally do things blindfolded on the basketball court, and he would outdo you because he was that practiced, right? And that intense about where he was going with the things that he was doing. So that little rant is just to tell you that
It was awesome, too. No, it was good. You had me thinking so much. I mean, the onion. I was trying to, and I didn't want to stop you because I was, man, that was good. That was good. I was thinking of Lovie Smith, and I think there might be something to it because the way you describe Ed Milet, it's 4 quarters. He's breaking it down 24 hours in a day divided by 4 is 6. So he's breaking it up in 6, little quadrants, 4 quadrants of 6-hour time frames and really nailing down, hey, I gotta, and take that quick little pause and then go back at it again. So, to your point of what you were saying with the other book, how they look at it in quarters. Right. Every 3 months, I'm looking at evaluating. So I'm having this clarity of like, did I get there? And it's really just reverse engineering yourself of breaking down and having expectations and treating it. And it's so funny. We didn't plan on speaking about sports. Obviously, that wasn't the thing. But how much, life is a sport. And then how we're breaking them down into 4 quarters like a basketball game, and we're saying, okay, we have to win this quarter. What am I going to do in the next 6 hours to maximize my time to be the best efficient person I can be? And I love that just idea. And it's really just trying to stay accountable to yourself. I was thinking about what you were saying. It's kind of the horse blinders, right? We talk about horse blinders a lot, where you have to. It's virtually golf in that respect. When we think about a sport, I mean, I'm not competing with John. I'm not trying to outrace. John has his own path. He's got his own game that he's going. We can trade notes. Hey, I had this situation go on here. Oh, that's similar to what I have going on over here. I mean, there's going to be similarities that we can trade these notes and learn from each other, but I'm not trying to trip John to win this race. My race is right here, and this is what I need to focus on. So to your point, when you talk about YouTuber success, it is distractions, and it is sometimes you can use it as a motivator, but don't be a hater. right? Be a motivator, be motivated that, Kevin Hart is doing so well and he's, 48 years old, and Patrick Bet David is only 46 years old. Don't be like, Debbie Downer. But I love that. And then the third thing I took from what you were saying that really hits home for me is when you talk about this men, you talk about this second book that you want to write, you know, it feels like what we did in America, I can't speak for other countries, is that we set up, how things should be. We gave you the tax code, for crying out loud, incentivizes you if you're married. It
Mm.
incentivizes you if you have kids. I mean, the tax code literally tells you how they want you to live your life. You get to write off depreciation if you own investment properties. You don't get to write off depreciation if you only own a primary residence. It literally, if you just read the tax code tells you exactly what you should have in your life, and how you get benefits when you have these certain things. And I feel like these milestones that they created for us way back in the 50s of getting married, having a home, having a family, it's been kind of blurred
Mm.
over the last 75 years. It's been blurred of what, I said this yesterday. I said, what comes, if you think of this: marriage, a house, and a baby. Now, in the 1950s, it was probably marriage, house, baby. What is it now?
Baby, marriage, house.
Maybe marriage. I would say baby, house, and then hey,
Maybe.
are we gonna get married? I don't really
Yeah,
like her like that,
yeah, I
So
agree.
you know what I mean. So just think about how that dynamic has changed. And to your point, I think, let's put the cat out of the bag. An Andrew Tate comes out of nowhere and strikes. Why does he strike? Because there is a lack of, males are struggling right now. They're not as confident as they used to be. And so someone like him can be idolized. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to debate that right now, but it's
Mm.
just the concept of like a guy like him showing, mucho macho machismo, super bravado. He can be resonated in a world right now because there is a lack of just, continue to believe in the goals. My brother is, he's a comedic writer.
Mm.
And, when he got out of school, he wanted to do that. And, you have a group of kids that still had that dream, right? So it's always about the dream in your mind. And as you get older, they start to fall off.
Mhm.
People stop believing. They give up. They don't read the story about Ray Kroc, and they don't read the story about Sam Walton and the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy, when he was
Colonel
like
Sanders. Yeah.
yes, he was like 60 some odd years old before he had success. Malcolm in the Middle, the guy from Breaking Bad, I can't think of his name, but
Mhm.
Brian Cranston.
Mm.
He had success as an actor as he got older. He had to find his role. He didn't have the success, out of college when he was 20 years old. These are people that still believed in the dream. They never gave up on it. They kept, just knocking at the door, and then finally the door opened for them. But there's so many people, to your point, that have given up. And, it's almost like the movie As Good as It Gets. Is this
Mm.
as good as it gets? Is this where I guess this is what I'm destined to do for the rest of my life? Ain't nothing more, nothing less. This is what it is. And you have to fight that, and maybe it's faith. Maybe it's a belief within yourself, internal belief that you can do more, and you're meant to do some amazing things. But you have to keep fighting and keep moving forward. And so I love your little tangent right there because that really hit home for me. So I appreciate you on that.
No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate it. I don't know, is there any chat or questions offhand or?
It's been pretty quiet. I don't know if they were having system issues, but I mean, normally we do get some calls or some comments. I don't see any today. We've been hovering around 200 people have been listening to us, which is pretty cool. But we just had a conversation. I didn't see any questions, so I didn't even go that route. I just let it roll and just
No, no.
we made it an hour. So at this point, let's wrap this up. Why don't you give everyone here your contact information and tell everyone about the book?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll bring it, and I kind of wrote these notes down to bring a loop to it. Most people repeat cycles because they skip steps. All right. So I'll leave you with this. Something that came out of the book and kind of self reflection, even after writing it. No awareness equals no change. No alignment equals friction. Okay. No action equals stagnation. And no accountability is a relapse. Make sense?
Makes
So
sense.
the 4A loop: assess reality, alignment decisions, act decisively, and take accountability consistently. So think like a CEO long before you become one, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have to have a title on a business card. It's one of the reasons I created Go for CEO, because to me, God put it in my heart. It was something that was given to me as a brand. And I always feel like no matter if you're a teller at a bank branch, which I've had that, people in those positions, or an oil mechanic, or an owner of the shop, or a mortgage broker, or the mortgage, brokerage owner, you have to keep thinking that you are the CEO of that position, that time, that essence in your life. So hopefully that hits home. No awareness, no change, no alignment, friction, no action equals stagnation, and no accountability means you are relapsing.
The book is called 4A
The
Formula.
the 4A formula. Untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. It's on Amazon. Coming out in audio, by the way, on Audible next week, I believe. So I'll be sharing that on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you go ahead and order it on Amazon, thank you so much. It's an ebook. It's a hard copy, and then it'll be on audio very shortly here in the next week or so. We finalized that, and man, kudos to you, man. I've always admired every step that you're taking, and so cool, man. 20 years from now, we'll be keep on improving, right? We're only going to be near our what? Well, I'll be in my 70s. I don't know what you'll be, but so,
65, man. I'll be
yeah,
65.
so yeah,
Crazy.
so we'll and look, I'll leave you with this too. Like, and this is totally different. I don't. I've no longer am planning for retirement, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I feel like I'm going to give as much as I can until I die. That's the bottom line. Like, I don't have a retirement plan. Not that I don't have, 401k and but investment, all that type of stuff. But like, I truly feel that if you're going to spend this life, this one time that you have, then spend it, working. And like, it's biblically, and I'm getting better at my Bible verses, but I don't know one off the top of my head. But it literally says that you must work, right? It's part of the plan. You didn't get put on earth to not work. So even, and it's funny because like Tom Brady makes $400 million and then gets into broadcasting. He didn't have to do it. He could have easily just walked away and gotten fat and happy, right? So as an example, but
No, I love it. No, I appreciate you today. Love to have you back on next year. Merry Christmas to you and your
yeah, Merry
family,
Christmas. I
and
love that.
Happy
And
New
by the
Year.
way, yeah, Merry Christmas. Don't get me on that tangent. I love that you said that, man, because too many happy holidays. Look, it's Christmas, baby. We're defending
Yeah.
that honor that it's the rise of our king.
So awesome sauce, man. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with Jess Ford on part 2 of investings. We talked about real estate investing last week with Jess Ford, had a great conversation, got into house hacking, short-term rentals, long-term buy and hold strategies. So we're going to finish up that conversation tomorrow, and appreciate everyone from listening today, and everyone have a great day. Take care.